This is an area model. I'm trying to multiply 3 times x plus 2y minus 7z. So how you know how to factor or to multiply is to multiply each of the pieces. So 3 times x would be our 3x. 3 times 2y is 6y. And 3 times negative 7x would be negative 20, or z, excuse me, 21z. And if there were like terms, we could combine them. There's not. So the answer would just be 3x plus 6y minus 21z. So that's review. We've done that a lot. So I'm going to kind of skip around those, so don't get annoyed, but I'm going to kind of skip back and forth. So let's look at this one. I'm multiplying 2x plus 5 times x plus 3. So it's already set up for you. So for each of the pieces, we're going to multiply. So the top left would be 2x squared. The top right would be 6x. Bottom left would be 5x. And then bottom right would be 15. And we do have like terms, 5x and 6x. So if we combine those, we would end up with 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be given this, and we're going to create those two things. So we're going to work backwards. There's specific steps you have to follow to be able to do that. Teachers teach this in 100 different methods. I decided over the past couple of years that this is the method that I think works the best. A, because it's one way to learn for all different kinds of quadratics. It works for every single one. And I think we like that when there's just like one thing to do for every single problem. There are different methods. You may go on Google and find them. If you want to use them, whatever, that's fine with me. I just know that for most of us, we like one way that works for everything. So here's the way, okay? So before we get into actual quadratics, let's just look at this one. So we're given the stuff inside the boxes. A way we can kind of undo this is the first thing we want to do is find the greatest common factor of those three things. It could be numbers. It could also be variables. So you need to be careful. So let's just look at the numbers. What would be the greatest common factor of 10x to the third, negative 14x squared, and 12x? What's the biggest number that goes into those? Yeah. Two. We're just numbers for now. Yeah, just 2. Good. Yeah. They also have what in common? An x. We can't say x squared because this guy only has one singular x. And if we're talking about factors, we only can take out what we have. So 2x would be the greatest common factor of all of these. We're going to kind of build off of this 2x. So we're trying to multiply 2x by something to get 10x to the third. So let's just start with the numbers. What times 2 gives us 10? 5. And I already have an x. I need to get to an x to the third. So I need x squared. Right, I need x squared. For the second one, 2 times negative 7. And then I already have an x. I need an x squared. So it'd be x. And then the last box, 2x times 6 would give us 12x. So if I were to rewrite this, I would have 2x times 5x squared minus 7x plus 6. Those would be my 2 factors. 2x is the factor on the left. 5x squared minus 7x plus 6 is the factor on top. Any questions so far? Yes.
Why don't you separate the 5x squared and the over 7x plus 6?
What do you mean, why did I separate it?
Because you put a 2x by itself and then the other 2.
So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see what 2 things can I multiply together to get this answer that's inside the box. What I can do is I can multiply 2x by 5x squared minus 7x plus 6. That's the goal. Okay. Before I gave you this and said, multiply these together, and you were getting the stuff inside the box. So we're kind of working backwards. Okay. All right, so again, I told you I'm going to skip a lot. So I want you to go all the way to find this. 3x squared plus 4x minus 4. That's where the fun starts. So I'm giving you a quadratic. We know it's a quadratic because of the squared. And our goal is to get our two factors. Okay, that's the end goal. There are a lot of steps we have to do in between that. And I'm going to carefully talk about each of the steps. So I have 4 boxes. I need to fill them. That top left box every single time is going to be whatever term is by the x squared. So 3x squared is what's going to go in that top left of our area model. The bottom right of our area model is always going to be our constant. So what's our constant term? -4. Important to say that negative. Now I have an issue and we're about to solve it. But my issue is I only have 1 term left, and how many boxes do I have to fill? 2. Now we're trying to combine to get 4x. There's an infinite number of things that combine to get 4x, guys. 2x and 2x, 4x and 0x, 1x and 3x, 10x and -6x. Like there's a lot of different possibilities that I could fill in those other 2 boxes. If I combined them, I got 4x. So I'm going to give you a method that can give you the correct answer. So I want you to make a big X on your paper. On the bottom of the X, we're going to put that middle term. That middle term is 4x. On the top of the X, we are going to write the product of 3x squared and -4. What's the product of 3x squared and -4? -12x squared. So all I did was I multiplied those 2 things together. So here's the game. You need to figure out 2 terms that will multiply to get -12x squared. And at the same time, those 2 terms add to get 4x. I'm going to give you like a minute. Do not talk. If you want to just think about the numbers, 2 numbers that multiply to get -12, and those same 2 numbers add to get 4x. Are you cool with me saying x? Okay. So 6x, -2x. If I multiply those together, I do get -12x squared. If I add those together, I get 4x. So we're going to use those 2 things and fill in the other 2 boxes. Miss Simpkins, does it matter which one I put where? No, it doesn't. I'm just going to put the 6x here and the -2x there. If you had them switched, that is fine. Does not matter. Let me show you another way to check if you're right. So we said if we multiply these, we got -12x squared, right? I want you to multiply the other 2 together. What do you get? -12x squared. Isn't that cool? I mean, you don't have to think it's cool. I think it's cool. They should equal the same thing. So guess what? If they don't equal the same thing, what can you say? Yeah, you did it wrong. So at least you can check to see if that's right or wrong. So now let's talk about how to find the 2 factors. So just look at the first row. What's the greatest common factor of that first row? 3x. 3 is the biggest factor that goes into 3 and 6. They both have an x, so we have to include that. So we're going to kind of build off of that. So 3x times what would give me 3x squared? 1x or just x? I'm just going to say x, but if you want to put 1x there, that's fine. 3x times what gives me 6x? 2. And then if we look at the bottom left-hand box, x times what gives me -2x? -2. And we can check to see, does -2 times 2 give me the bottom right box of -4? It does. So my answer would be what's on the left, which is 3x minus 2 times my top factor, x plus 2. Any questions so far? Again, we're going to practice this like 100 times, not 100, but like a lot. Okay, let me show you another way you can check your answer using Desmos. Don't take out Desmos. I'll do it on my screen. But if you remember from the little basketball thing we did, I told you that these two lines should cross this parabola. Do you remember where it should touch the parabola? On the x-axis. So let's make sure that that's true. So our parabola, was 3x squared plus 4x or minus 4x? Plus 4x minus 4. And our two factors were 3x plus 2 or minus 2? Minus 2 and x plus 2. And you can see that my two lines cross my parabola wherever that parabola touches the x-axis. Wow. Everybody say wow. 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 It's exciting. Okay. Really try another one? Okay. Let's try another one. We'll probably do one. We'll do two more before we kind of take a brain break for lunch. Okay, so my quadratic is 4w squared minus 21w plus 20. So in the top left goes what term? Yeah, the first term, 4w squared. And then in the bottom right box would go 20. So then we want to make our x. At the bottom of our x, we have negative 21w. That's the middle term. And then the top of our box, or x, we want to multiply to get 80w squared. So again, I'll give you a minute or so. You're trying to think of two things that multiply to get 80, add to get negative 21. Multiply to get 80, add to get negative 21. Before you do anything, someone tell me what you know about those two terms. If we're multiplying to get a positive and adding to get a negative,
Or must be a negative.
both have to be negative. Both. So, right, who thinks they have them? What you got, Addison? Negative 5w, negative 16w. If I add negative 5 and negative 16, good, Amalia, I get negative 21. If I multiply negative 5 and negative 16, I get 80. So again, it does not matter which boxes you fill. Let's make sure. Is negative 16 times negative 5w equal to 80w squared? Yeah, so those two diagonals do equal each other, which is another way to check. So let's look at the top row. What's the greatest common factor of 4w squared and negative 16w? 4w. So if we work from there, 4w times what gives me 4w squared? W. 4w times what gives me negative 16w? Negative 4. And then w times what gives me negative 5w? Negative 5. And then we can check negative 5 times negative 4 is 20. So then we just want to write our two factors, 4w minus 5 and w minus 4. Okay, again, I'm just going to check. You don't have to do this every time, just for the first few, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to type in my quadratic to Desmos, which was 4w squared. I'm going to use x though. Plus minus 21x plus 20. And then, yes, Miss Simpkins, that's right. And then it was 4x minus 4 or minus 5. And then x minus 4. And you can see that those two lines cross my parabola on the x-axis. So I feel good about that. Ooh, thank you. I appreciate it. Makes me feel good when you do that. Okay, last one, and then we'll go to lunch or take a break until lunch. So this beat the test says identify all the factors. Well, guess what? How many are there going to be? 2. So you should only have 2 answers. So if you marked 4 of them, not good news. So 2 answers. I would just oh, sorry, Selene, I didn't see your question. -5 here. Okay, so were you good with getting the 4W, the W, and the -4 part before I talk about the -5? Okay, so then when I didn't have -5 here, I know that this bottom left box, W times something, has to give me -5W. So that something would have to be -5. Is that clear? Okay, good. All right, so let's factor 18x squared, which goes in the top left box. -5 goes in the bottom right box. -9x is going to go in the bottom of our x because that's the middle term. And then what's 18x squared times -5? -90x squared. So take a second. You're trying to multiply to get -90. So if we're multiplying to get a negative, what do we know? If we're multiplying to get a negative, no, 1. A positive times a negative is a negative. So one of your factors has got to be a negative. All right. What are the 2 numbers? Asa, what are they? -15x and 6x. So if we add those, we do get -9x. If we multiply them, we get -90x. So I'm going to put 6x here and -15x here. If you did the opposite, that's fine. We should still end up with the same 2 factors. So what is the GCF of the top row? Yeah, Robert. 6x. 6 goes into 18 and 6. X goes into, I think that's right, Lauren, if I remember correctly. 6x times what gives me 18x squared? 3x. 6x times what gives me 6x? 1. Yeah, 1. And then 3x times what gives me -15x? -5. And I can check that -5 times 1 gives me the bottom right box of -5. So my 2 factors are 3x plus 1 and 6x minus 5, which is the second and the last one. The second one and the last one. Go ahead and find this problem that said under the let's practice, please. Okay, so I want you to tell me what's different about this problem than the first 3 problems that we factored. Yeah. Okay, so it's equal to 0. And that's important because if you remember correctly, we're worried about where the parabola touches the x-axis. And it touches the x-axis when the y value is 0. So before, we were just getting the 2 lines. Now we're going to get the actual number where this parabola is crossing the x-axis. So the beginning parts of doing this is the exact same as we just did. So if we make our area model, b squared is still going to go in the top left-hand corner. 15 is going to go in the bottom right-hand corner. So at the bottom of our X, we have 8B. At the top of our X, we're gonna have 15B squared. Ooh, look at, they listen. So let's look at it. Who is it, Trey or Brady?
I'm guessing, yeah, probably Brady. Yes.
So 2 things that multiply to get 15, add to get 8. This one's a little bit more simple than most. What are they? 3B and 5B. So that's what I want to fill in the other 2 boxes with. So if we look at the top row, what's the greatest common factor of 3B and 5, or sorry, B squared and 5B? B. So B times what equals B squared? B. B times what equals 5B? And then B times 3 would give us 3B. And then to make sure 3 times 5 equals 15. So that gives us our 2 factors of B plus 3 and B plus 5. But now we added this extra part that says it equals 0. So tell me what you know. If I multiply 2 things by each other and my answer is 0, what do you know? What has to be true? 1 or both. Yeah, at least 1 has to be 0. So we actually did this at the beginning of the year. You may or may not recall. We're going to set each of those equal to 0. So B plus 3 equals 0 and B plus 5 equals 0. Because this would give me my 2 possible answers. So if we're trying to get B by itself, on the first equation, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides to get B equals -3. On the second equation, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides to get B equals -5. So those 2 numbers are telling me the points where this parabola crosses the x-axis. It's going to cross at x is -3 and x is -5. So let's make sure that that's true. So I'm going to graph it. X squared plus 8x plus 15. And if you look, it crosses at -3, 0, and -5, 0. Wow. Thanks, Madison. Wow. Nihal, we're on page, what page are we on? 129. Yes. Oh, you good? Okay. Okay, so let's try one more. And then I'm gonna let you do one on your own, because the factoring part's no different than it was before. All we're adding is this next little like wrinkle where we have to set it equal to 0. So this one was B equals -5 and -3. You may also see your answer written like this, where the 2 values are written inside braces, those like little squigglies. 129, Nihal. That's fine, or you can list them as B equals -3, B equals -5, or you could have said -5, 0, -3, 0. All of those answers would have been fine. Yeah, Robert.
So when you get to your B plus 3 and B plus 5, don't you just have to reverse the sign?
Yes, but sometimes that B will have a coefficient, so we might end up with some fractions, which is actually going to happen on the next one. Okay. Yes.
How do you know, like, is it supposed to be -5 or
I would always list the smallest 0 first, then the next one. So -5 is smaller than -3. So list them in that order. Okay. All right, so let's look at the next one. So we're trying to factor 10f squared plus 17f plus 3. So here is my area model. 10f squared is going to go in the top left box. Our constant 3 is going to go in the bottom right box. So at the bottom of our x is 17f squared. At the top of our x is whatever 10f squared times 3 is. Not right now, Nihal. We'll talk at the end of class. 30f squared. That multiply to get 30, but add to get 17. Are they, Henry? 15f and 2f. So that's what we're going to fill in the other two empty boxes. So 15f and 2f. So let's take the greatest common factor of that first row. So 10 and 15. What's the greatest common factor? 5, and they both have an f. So 5f. 5f times what gives us 10f squared? 2f. 5f times what gives us 15f? 3, yeah. 2f times what gives us 2f? 1. So that's our two factors, 5f plus 1 and 2f plus 3 equals 0. So I'll give you a couple minutes. I want you to figure out what each of those factors are. So remember, you're going to set 5f plus 1 equal to 0 and solve, 2f plus 3 equal to 0. I would like you to, your answer is going to be a decimal or a fraction. It doesn't really matter which way you write it, as a decimal or a fraction. Both are fine with me. Okay, so for the first one, you want to subtract 1 to get 5f equals -1. And then if you divide both sides by 5, f is equal to either -1/5, or if you made it a decimal, it's -0.2. And then for the other one, subtract 3 to get 2f equals -3. And then when you divide by 2, f gives you -1.5 or -3/2. Both of those are great. So again, when I'm about to graph this, I should expect it to touch the x-axis at -0.2 and -1.5. So let's make sure that's true. X squared plus 17x plus 3. And on Desmos, it's just, you just have to click on the point where you're trying to get the values and you'll see, wow, thank you. -1.5 and -0.02. Beautiful. Okay, so I would love for you to try the next one. We're gonna do one more problem after this, I think. And let me know when you have your answers, because I want to come look at them. So you're doing your area model, you're setting them equal to 0, and then you're going to try and find your two factors. All right, so we have our area model, and I'm going to go pretty quick, so let me know if you need me to slow down. So 6j squared and 14. So 6j times 14 is 84j squared. And then we have -19j. So the factors that multiply to get 84 would have been -7j and -12j. And so the greatest common factor here would have been 6j, 6j times j, 6j times -2, and then j times, oh, this is -7. So your two factors were 6j minus 7 and j minus 2. And those are both equal to 0. So once you have set both of those equal to 0 and solved, you got an answer of 2 and 7/6. I would have switched those. I just wrote them in that order. So 2 and 7/6 were the answer. So I would expect these to cross at x equals 2 and x equals 7/6. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, like, if it's like, it doesn't matter which order you put it in.
Yeah. Amelia was asking this earlier. I technically should have done it in numerical order from least to greatest. So that's, if you see it like, that's what it'll be. It would have been the smallest answer first, then the bigger answer. Okay, so I'm going to jump down quite a lot. This will be the last problem we look at for today. But like I said, we're going to practice this on Friday and when I see you guys again on Tuesday. So find number 3 under the try it, which is in the next section. So what do you see on this? It equals 1 instead of equaling 0. We're not allowed to equal anything except for 0 before we solve. So we need to make this equal to 0. Does anyone have a suggestion of what we could do to make it equal to 0 instead of equal to 1? We need to change something. Robert, what's your suggestion?
You subtract 1, and then you subtract from those.
So I'm allowed to take away 1 or whatever is over there. If it was a 38, I would subtract 38 from both sides. If it was something else, I would subtract that. I need to make that right-hand side equal to 0. So my left-hand side would be 6d squared plus 5d minus 1 now because I subtracted 1. And now that's going to equal 0. So I took the 1, I subtracted it over to the other side so that I had it equal to 0. Okay, so this will be the last one I want you to do. So go ahead and try and get your 2 answers for this one. And then once I come check yours, I'll let you work on your homework for the rest of class. So go ahead and work on those, get your 2 factors. Have 6D and yeah, Amelia. Do you have a question about the homework? Or are you done? Okay, give me 1 second so I can finish with him and I'll come help you. Did you have that, Didon? What I have in my X? 6D and negative 1D. That's why. So the 6 and the negative 1, I think you had as negative 6 and positive 1. When you fill in your boxes, you want to use these 2 things. So you'd put 6D in one of the boxes and negative 1D in the other. It should be D at the top.
You don't have to.
And then 6D times 1. Yeah, 1. Correct. And then on the side, it would be negative 1. 6D minus 1
I'll tell you.
On what?
equal to 0. Solve that. If I add 1 to both sides, I get 6D equals 1. And then I want to divide by 6, and it could be a fraction.
Do you not know?
So D is equal to 1/6.
Oh, yeah, just go back to your house meeting.
Yeah. So then the other one, what would you get for the other value?